Hey everybody, welcome back to Holt Growers. I'm your host Timothy Holt, and this is my front yard. Right behind me is the apple tree. We're going to be talking about that on this week's episode, as well as the plum trees in the front yard. So stay tuned. Hope you get something out of it. If you'd like to leave a comment, please do so. And as always, get that thumbs up and the subscribe button. You can share this video with anyone you like. If you have any suggestions on better editing, I'll take those into account as well. Thank you. All right, let's let this car go by. Truck. So this is our single apple tree. It needs another apple tree to cross-pollinate. We'll start with talking about it, and then second half of the video we'll talk about the plum trees. So cross-pollination is pretty simple. The buds that form in the spring, bees come along, do their thing, and they pollinate with other apple trees. Nice thing is our neighbors across the street have 5 apple trees, all different varieties. So they're close enough that we don't need another apple tree on the property here in order to do that. Now you might be wondering why we have this strap here, and that is because this particular tree, when it was planted, it started growing up crooked, and you can actually see it leaning at the top here. We'll zoom up here, and you can definitely see it leaning right there. And since it is leaning heavily, we have this post here and strap to help hold it upright. The idea here is as it grows and gets a stronger trunk, it'll eventually grow straight up. That is the hope, that's the plan. If it continues to lean too far, it will actually uproot itself, and then we have a dead tree. So we don't want that. This particular tree we have not trimmed since getting it, with the exception of what the weather has trimmed for us. But we have not manually trimmed it. This is just how it has grown, which can be a problem. But this apple tree is a sugar crisp apple. The neighbor isn't sure exactly what varieties his are. They range between green, gold, and red in color, so we get a good mix. However, we haven't really had any crop come off of the apple tree, mainly because of its size and leaning, but also because of its age. Apple trees take 3 to 5 years to mature, and they also take 1 to 2 years to establish when they're being transplanted. This tree has been here for about 2 years now, and so we expect to have some apples on it next year. Also, the other reason is deer. Even though we are in the middle of town, even though we do have Hunter's truck sales and service shop next door, which you can hear in the background often in my videos, we still get deer here in town, and this tree creates easy pickings for them. They can just come right up, grab that apple, and yawn, be on their way, which is fine with me. I don't mind them doing that as long as they stay out of the backyard where we have a lot more going on. So, but that is a quick thing about the apple tree. If the deer get too aggressive with the tree, we will put a protective barrier around the trunk of the tree that will also help it grow straight up and keep the deer from rubbing up against it and damaging it that way. But overall, it's a healthy tree. It's just leaning heavily, and that's why we have this strap here and this post. So that's what we got going on for the apple tree. Let's move over to our plum trees. Alright, so this is one of our plum trees. Both of our plum trees are Japanese variety. They are supposed to be good for this climate, and our older tree seems to be growing really well. We'll get to that after talking about this one. So plums, just like apples, need 2 or more varieties in order to cross-pollinate, and otherwise you won't get any fruit. They'll look cool. You'll get the nice pinkish color blooms, but you're not going to get any fruit if you don't have cross-pollination. So cross-pollination is very important when it comes to plums and apples. But this one is a Japanese light purple, I think is what it's called, plum tree. It's about baseball size, a little bit smaller than a baseball plum, so it's one of the bigger varieties, and it has a light purple hue to it when it's ripe. So we're looking forward to having 300 to 500 pounds of plums every year, every season, off of this tree alone, once it is fully matured. Now, unlike apple trees, which take 3 to 5 years, plum trees can take up to 6 or 7 years to fully establish and mature. You'll start getting some crop about year 3, year 4, but it's not going to fully produce for you until about year 7. My fascination is these spike branches. I'm not sure the exact etymology of the word for them. I call them spike branches because they're not really spikes, but they're not really branches. They're kind of a mix between the two, because some of the longer ones will have leaves on them, like this one, but they're definitely pointy and sharp like a spike. So we'll zoom in, let you see that real quick, okay? So let's, like that one right there has some leaves on it, beautiful leaves. But this one doesn't, and neither does that one. And if you stick your finger on it, it is pretty sharp, and they cover all of the branches. So there's a whole bunch right there, and right here, which is pretty fascinating. And that is indicative of this particular variety of plum tree. Not all plum trees have them, as we will see with our other plum tree here. So we have 2 plum trees in the front yard. And they're 2 different varieties because we're the only ones in town with plum trees. So it is a beautiful tree. I love it. It does add quite a bit of curb appeal to the house as well. So let's cut over to the other plum tree. All right, this is the granddaddy, if you will. This is our mature plum tree. Planted it almost 7 years ago now. There used to be an overgrown bush in this location. The sidewalk was already around that overgrown bush. Came in, dug out the overgrown bush, and put in this beautiful plum tree. So one thing you'll notice real quick about this plum tree, other than the cat hair there, but one thing you'll notice real quick about this plum tree is it looks very different than the one you just saw. That's because this is a royal purple, Japanese royal purple plum tree. Pink flowers that you see a lot with plum trees and cherry trees, this is going to have, but it also has a very unique style growing. You're not going to see the spike branches that you saw in the other plum tree. Instead, what you're going to see is this massive singular trunk here that just gets bigger and bigger, and then you're going to see all kinds of crazy offshoots. And when I say crazy offshoots, I mean it. We'll do a pan around this thing, and you can see how these branches that come off of this thing. It's like no rhyme or reason to it. It's also pretty tall. It's about 15 feet tall right now. It is fully grown. When I planted it, I thought it was an apple tree, but I found out about 3 years later that it is in fact a royal purple plum tree. So that explains why there was no crop on it for that time, as well as it being young. That's also why we planted a second plum tree behind the camera that you just saw. It's to cross-pollinate with this beast. We do need to do some trimming up by the roof because of how close it is to the house, but that's not a big deal. The main thing about this royal purple plum tree is you're going to get those, they're about that big around plums. They're going to be a real dark, deep purple, not a lot of juice, but they're going to have a lot of flesh to them and small pits. So they're really easy. It's going to be a firmer plum, really tasty and delicious. If you like plums, the royal purple variety is a good variety. They're a good size for a snack or a quick, healthy bite. So now let's check out these branches and how they just kind of go anywhere they want. They just branch out wherever, as you can see. And then if we pan around here, you can see right there the trunk, but then, oh my, that thing's just grown out the side and grows up. There was another one growing right there that I end up having to trim off last year, but that's because it was hitting the ground. Instead of growing up, it grew straight out and down to the ground. So that's about all the trimming that these trees really need. Is you don't have to trim them unless they're becoming an inconvenience or interfering with other plants or structures. So I don't do a lot of trimming at all on it. I will come in, and if the tree looks like it's going to have an offshoot that's going to go towards the ground, I'll take it off, or if it's affecting the house. So, but it is a beautiful tree. It does give us quite a bit of curb appeal as well. I like it. And I'm going to zoom out here so you can see it in all of its beauty. And that thing is a gorgeous tree right there. So that is the front yard. We have those blueberry bushes right there in front of the porch. And right there's our other plum tree. So I'm going to leave you on that. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.